turned 30 somewhere in Utah, in the middle of red dust and silence, with my wife laughing at me because I insisted on cooking my own birthday dinner over a camping stove that barely worked. That's the kind of life we'd built. Unplanned, slightly broken, and somehow perfect anyway. We had this old camper van, a faded blue thing that rattled like it had opinions about every mile we drove. I bought it off a guy in Nevada who swore it had character. What it actually had was a temperamental engine, a door that only opened if you kicked it just right, and a permanent smell of old coffee. But it was ours. Every summer, we'd take off. No real route, no strict timeline. Just roads, maps we barely followed, and whatever places looked interesting enough to pull over for. Those months were our escape from everything else. Jobs, bills, expectations. It was just us and the road. A few years back, we pushed the season a little further than usual. Normally, we'd wrap things up in September, head home before the weather turned. But that year, October came in warm, unseasonably warm. The kind of warmth that tricks you into thinking summer isn't over yet. So we said, screw it, one last trip. We headed into a stretch of forest somewhere. I couldn't tell you exactly where now. One of those places where the highways thin out into smaller roads, then smaller still, until you're on cracked asphalt with trees pressing in from both sides like they're trying to reclaim it. We had a campsite in mind. Nothing fancy, just a place we'd stayed before. But when we got there, the gate was shut. Big sign hanging on it, closed for season. I remember just sitting there behind the wheel for a moment, engine idling, both of us staring at that sign like it might change its mind. Okay, she said finally, shrugging. Plan B. We spotted a ranger station not too far back. Lights were still on, so we figured we'd ask. Maybe there was something still open nearby. Inside, it was just two rangers, older guys. They looked tired, like they were already mentally done with the season. I asked about campsites. One of them shook his head. Most of the main ones are closed now. Liability, maintenance, all that. The other one added, you might find some smaller spots off the old logging roads. People still use them. Not official, though. How far? I asked. He gave a vague gesture out the window. Drive a while. You'll see clearings. If there's already people there, just be respectful. That should have been enough of a warning in hindsight, but it wasn't. We thanked them and headed out. The road got narrower, rougher, trees thicker. The kind of place where the sunlight fades faster than it should, because the forest just swallows it. By the time we turned onto a dirt road, it was already getting dark. I remember thinking maybe we should turn back, find a motel, something. But then we saw it, a clearing up ahead, a few tents set up, a faint glow from a fire. Looks like a campsite, she said. It did. Enough anyway. So I pulled in. The van crunched over gravel and dirt as we rolled to a stop. The place felt off, even then. Too quiet. No music. No chatter. Just the fire crackling somewhere in the middle. We stepped out, and almost immediately, two men started walking toward us. They came out of the shadows like they'd been waiting. Both of them were thin, not just skinny, gaunt. The kind of thin that makes their clothes hang wrong. Dirt smeared across their faces, their hands. One of them wore this filthy gray hoodie, unzipped, no shirt underneath. His ribs showed when he moved. They smiled. That was the worst part. The smiles didn't reach their eyes. Evening, one of them said. Hey, I replied, trying to keep it casual. We're just looking for a place to stay the night." "No problem," the other said quickly. "Plenty of room." They stood too close, and they kept looking at her. Not glancing, not normal curiosity, just staring. Slow, deliberate, like they were trying to memorize her. I shifted a little, putting myself more between them and her. We made some small talk, names I don't remember, or maybe they never gave them. At one point, the guy in the hoodie tilted his head at her and said, almost to himself, "Dad will love you." The other one immediately laughed. "Yeah, but Mom won't." They both found that funny. I didn't. We retreated back toward the van not long after that, saying we were tired. They didn't argue, just watched us go. Inside, she looked at me and said, "Something's wrong." "I know," I said. We locked the doors. The plan was simple. Stay inside, keep quiet, leave at first light. But about an hour later, everything changed. We heard it before we saw it. An engine, loud, fast, coming down the road like it didn't care what it hit. Headlights burst through the trees, blinding for a second, and then a big white panel van tore into the clearing. Gravel sprang as it skidded to a stop. It looked old, dirt-streaked, no markings. The side door slid open. A man stepped out. He was probably in his 50s, maybe older. Hard to tell. He had this strange outfit on, long, flowing, almost like a robe, but decorated in a way that made me think of something Elvis might have worn, if Elvis had joined a monastery. Behind him came a woman, slightly younger, dressed in a similar style, but fitted to her. They moved with confidence, like they owned the place. The two men from earlier hurried over to them like obedient dogs. The older man didn't even look at them for long. His attention locked onto our van. He started walking toward us. Each step felt deliberate. Then he reached out and tapped the side of the van with his hand. Slow, rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. He leaned closer to the window, peering in. His eyes landed on my wife. And then he smiled. Not friendly, not kind. Something else entirely. In this deep, almost theatrical voice, like a preacher addressing a congregation, he said, "The Lord has provided us with another daughter for the cause." Before I could even process that, the woman behind him scoffed loudly. "A daughter," she said. "That's a new whore. That's what that is." That snapped something in me. My wife recoiled, fear flashing across her face, and scrambled back into the van fully. I pushed the door open and stepped out before I even realized I was doing it. "Who the hell do you think you are?" I shouted. "Talking to my wife like that?" For a split second, everything went still. The man's expression didn't change, but his hand moved. Fast. He pulled an old revolver from somewhere in his robe and raised it straight at me. Calm. Steady. "While the Lord demands we need fresh young women to help maintain our family," he said, voice still eerily composed, "I'm afraid we have no need for a man." He pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing. The sound echoed louder than a gunshot. In that moment, pure instinct, I moved. I lunged past him, barely registering the woman shouting something, and dove into the driver's seat. My wife was already there, scrambling to make space. Keys, ignition. The engine coughed. For one horrifying second, I thought it wouldn't start. Then it roared to life. "Go!" she yelled. I slammed it into gear and hit the gas. The van lurched forward, tires spinning on loose dirt before catching. I didn't care where I was driving, just away. Behind us, chaos erupted. Shouting, screaming. I heard the crack of something hitting the side of the van, then another. Rocks, maybe. One smacked against the window, hard enough to make it spiderweb slightly. The headlights bounced wildly as we tore back onto the road. I didn't stop. Didn't slow down. Didn't breathe properly until we were miles away. Back on something resembling a real road with no headlights chasing us. We didn't speak for a long time, just drove. Eventually, she reached over and grabbed my hand, squeezing it so tight it almost hurt. We found a motel that night. Neither of us slept much. We never reported it. I've thought about that a lot. Maybe we should have. Maybe it wouldn't have mattered. All I know is this. That was the last time we ever went off-road, looking for some hidden campsite. And whenever people ask me about our travels, about the best places we've seen, the craziest things we've experienced, I always think of that night. The night we nearly died at the hands of what I can only describe as some kind of pseudo-religious, meth-fueled cult in the middle of nowhere. And how close we came to not making it out.
I can't remember the first fish I ever caught, but I remember my father's hands around mine. I was 11, all elbows and scraped knees, standing on a mossy bank in the Olympic Peninsula, with rain hissing softly through the trees. My dad was behind me, smelling like coffee and cedar smoke, guiding the rod while my Uncle Ray whispered like we were in church. "Easy now, Maddie. Let him tire himself out." The trout flashed silver in the green water, and something in me opened. Some girls had horses, some had ballet. I had wet socks, pine needles in my hair, and a trout no longer than my forearm. From then on, camping was not a hobby. It was my pulse. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and I still think we are spoiled rotten here. Where else can you hike through old-growth forest in the morning, fish a cold river by noon, glass for elk by evening, and fall asleep under mountains sharp enough to cut the stars? Washington, Oregon, Idaho, British Columbia just over the line. This whole corner of the world feels built for people like me. I've camped in rain so heavy it flattened my tent, snow that buried my cooler, wind that screamed down alpine ridges like something alive. I've heard cougars cough in the dark. I've woken to bear prints 10 yards from my fire ring. None of that scared me, not really. Out of hundreds of trips, only one ever made me pack up with shaking hands and drive home before sunrise. It was early September, 3 years ago. I was 32 then, working too many hours and desperate for a few days alone. I drove out toward the Cascades, then followed old forest roads until the gravel narrowed and the trees swallowed the sky. I had a spot in mind near a stream, one I'd used twice before. Nothing fancy, no facilities, just a flat place beneath hemlocks, the stream running clear over black stones, and enough distance from the road that you could pretend the whole world had ended. It was perfect. I set my tent near the water, strung a tarp because this is Washington and only idiots trust blue sky, gathered deadfall, and made coffee even though it was nearly evening. The air smelled of fern, mud, and cold water. A raven croaked somewhere uphill. I ate noodles from the pot, cleaned up, hung my food, and settled in with my headlamp and a battered paperback. That was when I heard the laughter. At first I smiled. It sounded like people having a good time. Not close there exactly, but not far either. Maybe through the trees on the other side of the stream. There were several voices, men and women, talking over one another in that warm, careless way people do around a fire. I couldn't make out words, just tones, a burst of laughter. Someone whooped, someone else answered. I remember thinking, damn, there goes my solitude. Then I thought maybe I should go introduce myself. Solo camping as a woman teaches you caution, but it also teaches you the value of knowing who's nearby. A friendly hello, a quick read of the vibe, then back to my tent. I was reaching for my boots when every hair on my body lifted. It was not a thought, it was not a decision. It was my body screaming, danger. I froze with one boot in my hand. The laughter kept going, but something about it had changed. Or maybe I had changed. Suddenly it didn't sound like people having fun. It sounded like people pretending to have fun. Too loud, too bright, like a recording played in the woods by something that had never actually laughed before. My mouth went dry. I turned off my headlamp, then my lantern, then the tiny red light on my power bank. I sat in absolute darkness, hardly breathing, while the stream whispered beside me and those voices rose and fell beyond the trees. Once I heard a woman laugh so hard she seemed to choke. Then everything stopped. Not faded, not moved away. Stopped. The silence after it was so complete I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I did not sleep much. In the morning, I felt stupid. Sunlight has a way of making fear look theatrical. I made coffee, crossed the stream, and searched for the other camp. There was nothing. No tent marks, no boot prints, no fire ring, no beer cans, no toilet paper blooms, tucked shamefully behind logs. The duff was soft enough to hold tracks, but there were none except deer and my own. I told myself sound travels strangely in the woods. I stayed. That was my mistake. The second night came colder. I built a small fire, not because I needed one, but because I wanted the company. I cooked trout with butter and foil, drank tea, and laughed at myself for being spooked by echoes. Then the voices started again. This time they were closer. The first laugh came from upstream, sharp and sudden. I dropped my mug, and hot tea soaked into the dirt. A man's voice followed, low and amused. Then another. Then two women speaking together in quick, excited bursts. They were not across the stream now. They were in the trees behind my tent. I could still understand nothing. No words. Just the shape of conversation, the rhythm of a party. Except there was no crackle of fire, no clink of bottles, no footsteps, no music. Only voices and laughter moving between the trunks. My fear was instant and total. I killed the fire with my water jug, steam hissing up around my boots. I turned off my lamp. I crawled into my tent and zipped it shut, one agonizing tooth at a time. The laughter swelled. They were around me now, not walking, not approaching in any way I could hear, just suddenly everywhere. A giggle to my left, a deep chuckle near my food bag, someone whispering near the stream, a group breaking into wild laughter behind my head. I pressed both hands over my mouth. I did not pray. I wish I could say I did something noble, but all I did was tremble in my sleeping bag like a child. Something brushed the tent, lightly, once. The voices died again. I stayed awake until the sky turned gray. I packed without breakfast. My hands shook so badly I bent 2 tent stakes trying to pull them free. Before I left, I forced myself to look around. Again, there was nothing. No footprints circling my tent, no disturbed leaves, no broken branches, nothing but the stream, the hemlocks, and a place that had become wrong. A few weeks later, I stopped by a ranger station where I knew a couple of people. When you spend enough time outdoors, you end up friends with rangers, trail crew, fish and wildlife folks, the whole Muddy Boot tribe. My friend Jess was at the desk, and I told her the story, half joking, hoping she'd laugh and say, "Oh yeah, sound carries from the ridge," or "There's an unofficial party spot up there." She didn't laugh. Before she could answer, a voice behind me said, "Where was this?" It was Don. Everyone knew Don. Senior ranger, Salish. 60s maybe, though his face had that carved from bark quality that made age hard to guess. He was not a man who wasted words. I told him the drainage, the road, the stream. His expression changed so slightly, most people would have missed it. I didn't. "Did you go outside?" he asked. "The first night, no, I almost did." "Did you answer them?" "No." "Did you make noise?" No, I turned everything off and stayed quiet. He nodded once, slowly. Jess had gone pale. What? I asked. What is it? Don looked at me for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was flat and deadly serious. Stick Indians. I almost laughed because the words sounded childish, like something invented to scare kids away from the timberline. But Don's eyes stopped me. They mimic people, he said. Voices, laughter, sometimes crying, sometimes someone you know. They try to draw you out. If you had left your tent, they would have taken you. If you had called back, they would have known exactly where you were. If you had made yourself seen. He didn't finish. What are they? I whispered. Old things, he said. Bad things, not stories. The station was very quiet. Don stepped closer and lowered his voice. Your instincts saved you. That fear you felt? Listen to it every time. The woods speak. Sometimes they warn. I wanted to ask more, but he walked away. I have camped since then. Of course I have. Love does not vanish just because fear enters a room. I still fish cold streams and sleep under cedar boughs. I still wake before dawn to watch fog move through the timber. But I don't camp in that drainage anymore, and I never introduce myself to laughter in the dark, because sometimes, deep in the Pacific Northwest, when the fire burns low and the trees crowd close, you may hear people having the time of their lives just beyond the reach of your light. Do not answer. Do not step outside. Do not make a sound. They are not people.
I'm not going to pretend I slept that night. I've had people say that to me before, usually after a bad storm or a bear sniffing around camp. And most of the time they mean they slept poorly. They dozed, woke up, checked the zipper, listened to rain ticking off nylon, then rolled over and drifted again. I mean, I did not sleep. Not 1 minute. I've been camping alone since I was 17. I'm 46 now. I've hunted elk in Colorado, whitetail in Pennsylvania, and boar in Texas. I've done backcountry survival courses, land nav training, winter camping, primitive shelter building, and enough firearm instruction to know exactly what I can and cannot do under stress. I'm not saying that to puff my chest. I'm saying it because I want you to understand. I'm not one of those guys who hears an owl and thinks it's a ghost. I know what animals sound like. I know how darkness changes your imagination. I know how fear tries to put shapes where there aren't any. That night was different. I was in northern Idaho, not too far off a Forest Service road, but far enough that I had the place to myself. It wasn't a deep wilderness trip. I'd parked my truck at a pull-off and hiked in maybe 2 miles, maybe a little less. Enough to lose the road noise, and enough to feel alone. Camp was simple. 1-man tent, small fire ring, food hung properly, boots tucked under the vestibule, sidearm within reach. I carry a Sig Sauer 9mm when I'm out like that. Again, not because I'm looking for trouble. Because trouble doesn't care whether you're looking. I turned in around 10. The fire had gone down to coals. The woods were cold and quiet in that heavy way they get after midnight, when even the insects seemed to give up. Sometime around 2 in the morning, I woke to a woman crying. At first I thought it was part of a dream. That happens. Your brain grabs some sound and dresses it up. But then I heard it again. Help me. I opened my eyes and stared at the black ceiling of my tent. The voice was distant, but clear. Please, help me. Every part of me went still. There are a lot of things in the woods that can sound human if you don't know better. Foxes, cougars, certain birds. Even coyotes can make noises that turn your blood cold. But this was not an animal. It was a woman's voice. Shaking. breathless, terrified. "Help me, please." I sat up slowly. My first thought was injury. Some couple hiking late, bad fall, panic. My second thought was crime. My third thought was that none of it made sense at 2 in the morning, in that place, in that cold. I chambered the cig before I unzipped the tent. The sound of the slide was loud in the dark. I took my flashlight and stepped out barefoot first, then shoved into my boots without tying them. The air had teeth. My breath showed white in the beam. "Where are you?" I called. For a second, silence. Then, "Here! Please, I'm here!" The voice came from beyond the edge of my little clearing, maybe 100 yards out. I raised the flashlight and swept it through the trees. At first I saw nothing but trunks and brush. Then the beam found her. She was standing right at the tree line, a woman, early 30s maybe, completely naked, arms clutched across herself, hair hanging around her face. She was crying hard, shoulders hitching, body trembling. Even from that distance, I could see mud on her legs. "Help me," she said. "I'm being chased." My stomach dropped. I took one step toward her. Just one. And then my flashlight moved slightly to the right. Something glinted, not eyes, not dew. Something smooth and curved. The brim of a hat. There was a man crouched in the brush, maybe 6 feet to her right, low to the ground, still as a stump. If the light hadn't caught that hat, I never would have seen him. Everything in me changed. I drew the cig and brought it up in a two-handed grip, flashlight tucked alongside like I'd practiced 1,000 times and hoped never to need. "What the hell is going on here?" I shouted. The woman froze. I kept the light on the brush. "You in the bush, stand up. My cig is loaded, and I will fire on you." For 2 seconds, nobody moved. Then the man rose. He was tall, wearing dark clothes, baseball cap. I couldn't make out his face clearly, but I could see enough of him to know he'd been hiding, not helping. Then came the part that still wakes me up sometimes. The woman stopped crying, instantly. No winding down, no catching her breath. The sobbing just switched off like somebody had pressed a button. She lowered her hands from her face, and she smiled. It was the wrong kind of smile. Too wide, too pleased. Like a child caught cheating at a game and enjoying it. Then she started giggling. Not laughing. Giggling, high and breathy and insane. "Well done, you!" she said. She reached down into the brush by her feet and pulled out a jacket. It had been there the whole time. She slipped it on casually, still smiling, still giggling. "Next time, though," she said. "Next time." The man said nothing. They both turned and walked into the trees. Not ran, walked, like the show was over. I kept the pistol trained on the spot where they disappeared until my arms started to ache. I listened for footsteps, voices, anything. There was nothing. Just the woods again, pretending it hadn't seen a thing. Then my body caught up with my brain. I packed faster than I have ever packed in my life. No folding, no organizing, tent half stuffed, sleeping bag jammed in, stakes loose in the side pouch. I left the fire ring, left a cheap camp chair, and I'm pretty sure I left one sock. I did not care. I hiked back to my truck with the pistol in one hand and the flashlight in the other, turning every few seconds to check behind me. Those 2 miles felt like 20. Every branch snap sounded deliberate. Every shadow looked occupied. When I finally saw the dull shape of my truck through the trees, I almost cried. I got in, locked the doors, started the engine, and drove until I hit pavement. Only then did I pull over and call the sheriff's office. They took it seriously enough to send someone out, but there wasn't much to find. No woman, no man, no jacket, no footprints worth anything in the dry pine needles. The deputy asked me twice if I was sure she was naked. He asked if I'd been drinking. I hadn't. He asked if I thought it could have been a prank. I told him maybe. But I don't believe that. Not fully. Because who hikes into the woods at 2 a.m, strips naked in near-freezing weather, and waits in the pitch black, hoping some stranger hears them? And what was supposed to happen if I hadn't seen the man? That's the question I keep coming back to. Maybe I was supposed to rush toward her. Maybe the man was supposed to come up behind me. Maybe there were more of them. Maybe they wanted my gear, my truck, my wallet. Or maybe they wanted something worse. People talk about predators in the woods like they always have claws and teeth. That night taught me different. Sometimes they cry for help. Sometimes they smile when the trick doesn't work. And sometimes, if you're lucky, your flashlight catches the brim of a hat. I found the tent because of the crows. They were gathered in the trees above the creek, black shapes shifting against a white November sky. I thought maybe a deer had died there, or a hunter had left gut pile too close to the trail. Then I saw the nylon. The campsite had collapsed in on itself. One side of the tent was ripped open, the poles bowed like broken fingers. A pot lay half buried in needles. A backpack sagged beneath a cedar, green with mildew. Inside was a sleeping bag. Inside the sleeping bag was him. I will not describe the body except to say time had taken most of what made him human. He was bones, cloth, hair, and silence. Beside him was a journal, swollen from damp but still readable. His name was Caleb. He was 22. This is what he wrote. September 3rd. I am done pretending I belong anywhere. Maya left 2 weeks ago. She said she couldn't keep loving someone who refused to save himself. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was already gone and she was just the first person brave enough to admit it. I slept behind the laundromat 3 nights after she kicked me out, then under the bridge by the highway. Then I realized something. No rent, no boss, no phone, no people. Why not just leave? So I did. I bought rice, oats, a tarp, batteries, fishing line, a lighter, and a notebook. I still had my tent from when I was a kid. It smells like garage dust and mouse piss, but it keeps rain out. I walked until the road became gravel, then mud, then nothing. Found a creek, flat ground, big cedars, moss everywhere. This will be home. Not forever, maybe, but long enough to become someone else. September 6th. The woods are kinder than people. People look through you when you're dirty. Trees don't care. The creek doesn't ask why you failed. The ferns don't need you to explain why you cry while eating cold oats from a cup. I found chanterelles today. At least I think they were chanterelles. Cooked them with rice. Still alive. At night, it gets so dark the world disappears. At first, that scared me. Now I like it. There is comfort in being erased. September 10th. Took mushrooms today. Not the food kind. I'd been saving them since before Maya left. We were supposed to take them together on the coast. Watch the sunset. Talk about God. Instead, I ate them beside a creek with my boots off. Best day I've had in years. The trees breathed. Not in some metaphor way. They actually breathed. The bark moved slowly in and out like sleeping animals. The creek laughed over the stones. The moss was not moss. It was a green language. I apologized to everything. I told the cedar I was sorry humans cut its brothers down. I told the creek I was sorry for all the oil and trash and blood we put into water. I told an ant I was sorry for stepping on so many of its relatives. The ant climbed onto my finger and stayed there. I think nature forgave me. September 13th. Maya would laugh if she saw me now, or cry. Maybe both. I made a little shelf from branches. I have a cooking spot, a washing spot, a place to hang food. I'm getting better at this. Caught one tiny fish and let it go because it looked offended. I keep thinking I hear someone say my name, but it's only the creek. Caleb, Caleb, Caleb over the stones. I like hearing it. September 16th. More mushrooms. I know that sounds bad. Like I'm losing it, but I swear they help. They peel the gray film off the world. Today, I lay on my back for hours. Clouds moved through the branches, and every gap in the canopy became an eye. Not scary eyes, gentle ones. I asked the forest what I should do. The answer came from everywhere at once. Stay, so I will. September 19th. Found flowers upstream. White, bell-shaped, hanging from a thin green stalk. Beautiful, like tiny lanterns for fairies or ghosts. There were seed pods, too. I don't know why, but I felt like they were meant for me. I ate some seeds, not many. They tasted bitter and dusty. Afterward, my mouth got dry and my heart beat weird for a while. But then everything sharpened. The trees had edges of light around them. The creek sounded deeper, almost like a voice under the water. Not Caleb today, something older. September 20th. Bad dreams. Maya was standing across the creek in her red sweater. She said, "You can't live here. It already belongs to something." I woke up with my nose bleeding. There were deer tracks outside the tent, but they looked wrong. Too long. Almost like fingers. Probably raccoon. September 21st. The creek changed. I know how that sounds, but it did. All morning it was normal. Clear water, black stones, little bubbles in the current. Then around sunset, it went dark red. Not mud, not algae. Blood. It moved thick over the rocks. It clung to the banks. I could smell iron. I ran downstream, thinking maybe an animal died in it, but the red went as far as I could see. When I came back, it was clear again. I washed my hands anyway. They still smell like pennies. September 22nd. No mushrooms today, no seeds. Something walked around the tent last night. Heavy, slow, not a deer, not elk, not bear. It circled me until dawn. I held the knife and did not move. Sometimes it stopped right beside my head. I could hear it breathing through the tent wall. When the sun came up, there were no tracks. I hate that sentence. I hate writing it. No tracks. September 23rd. Nature is not kind. I was wrong. Nature is not mother. Nature is mouth. The ferns lean toward me now. The branches catch my sleeves. Roots twist under my boots. Everything wants me down in the dirt where it can open me. I tried to leave today. Packed my bag. Followed the creek downstream. Walked for hours. Came back to my tent. I don't know how. I never turned around. September 24th. Hungry. Rice is wet. Matches wet. Everything wet. Creek says Caleb, but not like before. Now it says come in. Come in. Come in. September 25th, I saw them. Between the trees, white faces, antler hands, long bodies made of shadow and bark and wet leaves. They don't walk, they unfold. One was wearing Maya's voice. "Baby," it said, "come out, I'm sorry." I almost did. I almost did. I almost did. September 26th. The flowers are everywhere now. They were only upstream before. Now they grow around the tent in a ring. White bells, little heads bowed. They make no sound, but I hear them ringing. I stuffed my ears with cloth. Still hear them. I think the seeds opened a door in me, and something looked through. September 27th. No fire, no food, cold. I keep sleeping and waking and sleeping and waking. Sometimes I wake outside, mud on my hands, blood in my mouth, not mine. Mine? Maybe. The creek is full of teeth tonight. Not fish. Teeth. Human teeth clicking over stones. I asked the cedar to help me. It said, "Feed us." September 28th. I found my phone in my bag. Dead, of course. I laughed for a long time. I think they laughed with me. The things in the trees, the creek teeth, the flowers with their little white mouths. I used to think being alone was the worst thing. It isn't. The worst thing is realizing you were never alone at all. September 29th. Maya, if you find this, I'm sorry. Dad, I'm sorry. Mom, I'm sorry. I wanted to become clean. I wanted the woods to fix me. But the woods don't fix. They take apart. September 30th. Snow may be ash, maybe skin from sky, hands blue, feet gone far away. Creatures waiting polite. They know I am almost soft enough. No more creek, blood only. Bells, 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 bells. No date! I understand now. The body is a campsite. Something always comes after you leave it. That was the last page. I closed the journal and sat there for a long time with the dead man beside me, and the creek moving bright and clear through the trees. The official report said exposure and starvation. Maybe poisoning. Maybe a psychotic break. Maybe all three. A grieving, homeless kid went into the woods with no real plan, ate things he shouldn't have eaten, got sick, got lost, and died alone in a tent. That is probably the truth. But I think about his last days more than I want to. I think about the cold creeping into him, the hunger folding him smaller, the terror of no longer trusting his own senses, how he must have listened to every branch crack and believed the whole forest was turning toward him. Maybe nothing supernatural happened. Maybe the creek never ran red. Maybe there were no creatures. Maybe that is worse. Because Caleb died surrounded by trees he thought had befriended him, and in the end, whether the monsters were real or only blooming inside his mind, he still faced them alone.